Hey, welcome, hello, new location. Well, same house. Bugger, I haven't got the framing very good though. Same house, different location, sitting on a brand new couch. That's pretty exciting. Marie's away, so I've got use of the lounge. Normally there's a yoga class going on, or a yoga sharing, a combined yoga effort this time on a Wednesday morning, but she's in America. Soon to head to Costa Rica to find a venue for our retreat we're hosting next year. Yoga retreat and transformational retreat, etc. So here I am, out of the bedroom, which is good. My sleep out's coming along nicely. I haven't put an ID on, have we? What's today? It's the 2nd of November here in New Zealand, 2022 to 11/22. Good numbers. It's Chat with Matt here in the Bright Light Beings Facebook group, half an hour or so to chat about whatever you might be interested in. So my office is coming along, my sanctuary is coming along in the backyard. I had to buy a new saw, would you believe? My saw clapped out. I should have bought a new saw right at the beginning. Of these renovations. It would have made life so much easier. I've been hobbling along with a very old, and it was only a cheap saw, drop saw, drop miter, compound saw, for far too long. And anyway, the brushes wore out and I couldn't actually get new brushes for it. And I'm in the middle of doing all these weatherboards, bevel back weatherboards, which require a compound cut at each end, 45 miter with a somewhere around about 9-degree angle as well, because they're on the bevel. They're bevel backed and they're sitting off the wall, overlapped, not shiplapped, but anyway, doesn't matter. But anyway, I've got a new saw and it's coming along much nicer. I'm doing a much better job of the corners now, which is much more satisfying and much less frustrating. So that's always good. Hey, Sister Jill. So yeah, here I am. Out here, enjoying freedom. Let me have a look. I don't think there was a comment in I checked about 45 minutes ago. I said ask us anything, it's our joy to serve. I put a poster on another one of me tramping there on the way to Hopeless Hut, which is, that's the Hopeless track, on the way to Hopeless Hut, which is situated sort of under Mount Hopeless in the Nelson Lakes National Park of New Zealand. And Mount Hopeless was named by Sir Edmund Hillary, who was the first man to climb Everest, a New Zealander. And he did a lot of his early mountaineering down in the South Island of New Zealand, and he named Mount Hopeless. And I've stayed a night in that hut underneath Mount Hopeless, underneath the peak above the tree line in the shingle slopes. Anyway, the little meme said, judging and resisting your own resistance only ever creates more pain. It's time to relax into allowance and enjoy. We do this all of the time. I have clients, I do it myself, and I have clients all of the time who are judging themselves as being in resistance and making themselves wrong for being in resistance, and wanting to work out why they are resisting something, from the idea that if they know why, then they'll be able to fix the problem of resistance. Beating yourself up for being beat up does not help. So it's quite common that we've been trained to make resistance wrong. We've been educated into having an expectation that we should be easily able to progress. If we've decided to do something, then we should be able to do it easily. We have that mentality because we cannot remember our deeper past. We do not understand, and we do not have a good awareness of the depth of the trauma, etc., that we carry from the past, the influence of our past history has over us. And so without having that in our conscious mind, it's very easy to think there's something wrong with us, when we feel scared about doing something, or we're resistant to doing something, we won't make the phone call, we won't take action on certain things that we have a feeling would benefit us, because we feel a resistance to doing it. We feel scared of doing it, or we feel doubtful, or we want to make sure that it's going to go well for us. We don't want it to go quote unquote wrong, because there's something inside of us that doesn't feel that it could cope with it going wrong. Hey, Sister Michelle. So this is very, very common. And for those of us who have been around the block more than a few times, you know, those of us who are more old souls here on the planet, it's very, very common and very entangled. I'm going to read that. Anyway, I'll just check if there's any comments here, which there are not. I'll just do a refresh on this page, and I'll read the comments up here on my thing, because I've got the phone a little further away. There I am, so that's good. Hey, Sister Susie, how are you? Yep. Jill said, coincidences again. I went to a ladies' business networking meeting this morning, and the topic of death came up. One lady is a celebrant and was advising in how to prepare for one's own funeral, etc. It wasn't a morbid conversation, quite the opposite. I shared about death being needed to allow new things to start up. Fascinating. Yeah. For those of you who don't know why that's a coincidence, because in my support community, the Mount Tara Transformation and Support Community, Mount Tara Transformation and Empowered, whatever, there's empowerment in there somewhere. Transformation and Empowerment Support Community. Made that name a little bit too long, but anyway, we've had it now for 7 odd years. We're not going to change it in a hurry. I'm not one of those people who keeps changing the names of things. But anyway, in November, our topic is death. We've just done in October the topic of health, and then we're moving into the topic of death. And funnily enough, or ironically, death is a very important part of being healthy and our relationship with death. Anyway, so that's what the coincidence is, and it's awesome that you got to have that conversation, Jill, and that it popped up. And I think it's appropriate for people to spend some time considering how they want their, rites of passage, their funeral, etc. Because otherwise it's just stressful on other people who get left to try and figure it out if you haven't made good plans. Sister Susie writes, just said goodbye to Sister Sonia yesterday. It had been nice to have some time together despite her horrible reason of death to basically be up in Auckland. That is because our dear Sister Sonia had a recent departure in her family, and so she travelled up to Auckland. So, yes, and it's becoming quite common, isn't it? We now have sudden adult death syndrome, and there's lots of conspiracy out there about why people are all of a sudden dying, and we have now record numbers of all-cause death across most of the Western world, right? Death rates are at all-time high, birth rates are at all-time low. Our population is going backwards currently, at least in the Western world. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I'm not a population reductionist mentality person. I don't think we have to reduce our population for the health of the earth. Not at all. Our earth is very capable of supporting our current population here. We just need to obviously stop wasting so much resource, and that's a matter of restructuring the corporate capitalist mindset that is basically, artificially creating lack in order to drive profits and keep people enslaved in the work mentality, right? Work for your happiness mentality, work for your survival mentality. But the point is, at this time of huge change energetically on the planet. A lot of souls are choosing to reset. They're choosing to pull this life that they're currently in for whatever reason and choose to be born again in a time in the future when it's going to be potentially more advantageous for their evolution, their spiritual evolution, their progression, than persevering with what's currently on offer for them and the situation they've currently got themselves into in all sorts of ways that we don't understand, not just in the external obvious situations. So choosing not to get contracted around the fact that people are quote unquote dying in their droves. It's not easy, of course, because we've been very much trained to believe that death is a bad thing, and that if someone dies, then we should find out why, and someone should be accountable. And it's a travesty, and they died quote unquote too young, and they were healthy, and they shouldn't have died, etc., etc., etc. All of this belief around based on the external idea of the human personality having its will. As opposed to us being an avatar or an expression of our soul, which is an expression of our higher self, the divine acting through us. And so as the little human, we like to think that we are in control and that we understand and that things should follow certain, obvious, sensible or logical pathways, and death shouldn't just happen, but it always has just happened. People have died of accidents and all sorts of weird occurrences that have led to people stepping off the planet rather spontaneously in the past, and it just seems to be happening more and more frequently. And of course we've got all of this sort of medical stuff going on at the moment, which has given souls the opportunity to get off planet rather easily. So I'm not making all of that BS quote unquote right. I'm just not making it as wrong as some people would like to make it. Some people have really contracted around the wrongness of what's happening medically and are fighting against it. Unfortunately, when we make things wrong and fight against them, we actually create a contraction around them, which creates an entraction. It's not going to change in a hurry if there's enough people fighting against it, because it's now become a point of purpose for people to fight against. So, as always, acceptance, right, is the pathway forward. It has happened, and it is happening, and it is hard for us as humans to deal with so many people dying before it seems logical for them to die, before we want them to leave us here. But nevertheless, that's what's happening. So it's difficult. Sister Michelle said, I've been pondering about what happens, what happiness is. If we've been programmed from childhood and told how to think, be, live, and I am working on letting go of beliefs that no longer serve me, and with that I'm learning what I once thought brought me happiness is not true, real. I find myself feeling void and empty inside and wondering what happiness will be for me now. Awesome, Michelle. I love that. I love that you're going on that inquiry. And yes, it does require us to be brave enough to relax into that emptiness as we strip away the program of what we have been trained to believe will bring us happiness, and what happiness actually is, success of having, success and security of having our, life needs met, right? Having enough money, having a stable relationship, having a house and a income stream, or et cetera, right? Having some level of status in the world, having some, relationships that are meaningful, etc. All of this stuff that we've been told equates to or will yield our happiness. When we start to inquire more deeply into it, we start to question, is this really my happiness? We get to a point where we go, well, goodness, can I be happy if I don't know what happiness is? And now I'm feeling very empty. amazing things happen. There's a saying, nature hates a void. A void, right? An emptiness. Nature will always come in and fill it. If we plow up a field, then within days, quote unquote, weeds start sprouting, right? Nature will reclaim that ground very, very quickly. And it's true of ourselves too. When we drop a lot or start to seriously diminish a lot of our beliefs around who we are and what it's required for us to be happy in the world, then something will replace it. And if we can hold a very neutral, open space, and what tends to arise from within us is a deeper sense of joy in the very fabric of our beingness. We start to find a joy in just breathing, in just existing. And while that might not be very satisfying to a mind that's quote unquote looking for more, right? Because that's what we've been trained to do. We've been trained to think that it should be more obvious. If we can relax into accepting the subtleties of where our happiness lies, then it tends to grow within us, right? We sink into the subtleties so that the subtleties become more, influential. That's probably the best word. The subtleties become more influential over our lives rather than things becoming more loud. It's the same with our guidance. I talk several times about this idea that most of us want our guidance, our intuition to be louder and more obvious, and it's never going to be. It's never going to be. But what happens is when you relax into the subtlety of your intuitive guidance, then it becomes more influential. It doesn't need to get louder because you've got quieter and you've become more respectful, more appreciative of the subtle guidance rather than being in frustration that your guidance isn't loud enough, right? As long as you're holding the belief that your guidance isn't loud enough, your intuition isn't strong enough, right? What you believe is what you're experiencing, then you're always going to be doubting it and you're always going to be wanting something that you don't have, as opposed to accepting and appreciating what you do have. When you accept and appreciate what you do have, what you appreciate appreciates, right? It gets stronger in you, not necessarily louder and more obvious, but it becomes a more stronger influence in you. So your guidance now you start taking action on your guidance, even though it's subtle, even though you're not sure, right? And as you do so, you find an assuredness in your subtle guidance, even though your mind might still be doubting it, right? You still might have reason to, not be externally sure. Jill wrote, for no good reason, I woke up this morning feeling massively more positive than I have for ages. Felt like I was celebrating All Saints Day instead of All Souls Halloween of the day before. It felt lighter, like I had left something massive go. I've spent all day trying not to analyze it. Perfect. Don't start analyzing it now. Just accept. Just accept and trust. The energies are shifting, and while we can't see the good reason for it, you've been doing the work. You've been going through the process. You've been showing up, day after day, experiencing your resistance and choosing to progress despite the fact that you've been feeling resistant and feeling off and, feeling doubtful and all the rest of it. And over time, if we let time work its magic, then progress occurs. That's all we really need to do. Jill said, a homeopath lady at this meeting gave me a strange piece of advice to get my house move to start flowing. She says I should bury an egg in my garden. Yep, but weird. Have you ever heard of that before? No, I haven't heard of that before, but go for it. What do you have to lose? One egg, however much that costs you, 50p or whatever. Can't go too far wrong, right? It's not a massive investment. And if you believe in it, and it's basically the symbol of the egg is a symbol of new life. So, bury your egg and allow it to work. Julie said, I like it. Done it with sand eggs. I'm not quite sure what a sand egg is. No idea. Never heard of a sand egg. Yeah, so my friends, I have no idea where my topic is going. We've talked about death and we've talked about people leaving, that's right. People leaving the planet, basically finding acceptance for what is unfolding, even though it's really uncomfortable, even though it's really quote unquote unusual, even though it is all entangled with all sorts of different agendas, some of which are quite nefarious. That's true. But the point is, getting entangled with people's eggs of sand. There was also a turtle. Turtles lay their eggs in sand, I know that. But yeah, I don't know what eggs of sand are. Anywho's, yeah, the point is, even though the thing is, you're a sovereign being, right? Having a unique experience here, you can choose to rise above the influence of all sorts of agendas if you choose to, right? What you believe will influence how all of these agendas are playing out. Believe it or not, the beings who have quote unquote dark intent to control the world can't do so unless people fear them, unless people buy into it. That's why they are always publicizing what they're doing, right? That's why they don't keep it secret. Because if it was a complete secret, they wouldn't actually have any influence over us. So they're always projecting out there the fact that they are there pulling the strings. They want people to be scared of them. They want people to fight them. They want people to resist, and they want people to be angry. The point is, you don't need to be completely ignorant, nor do you need to be completely informed. What you need to be is completely confident. Well, complete, that's a fucking bullshit word, isn't it? What you need to be is more confident, more authentically confident in who you are, and understand that while there are those choosing to, intending to control the population in, what we might call, from our point of view, negative ways, controlling ways, right? All sorts of control is basically negative because it's from an altruistic point of view, but people also, there's souls that are gaining benefit from being controlled. This is the point, right? Because it's a valid learning experience for them, right? Our job is to rise above it. Our job is to live our best life, despite the fact that all this is going on, because we do not need to be so controlled by them. We don't need to be so influenced by them. We certainly don't need to have our happiness diminished because of their actions. And yet some of you are going, yeah, but they're doing this and they're doing that and they're going to, they're poisoning our food. How can we be happy when our food is poisoned? Do you really think a divine expression of God is controlled by whether their food is poisoned? I don't know whether to bury a raw egg or hard boil it first. I don't think it matters, Jill. I wouldn't worry about trying to get it right. Just trust in the process. Trust in what you feel to do, right? This is it. Let go of needing to get these instructions right. Just bury the friggin' egg and trust that you're going to move on if that's what's going to serve you. So yeah, I get it. It's easy to be angered and frustrated and dismayed at the BS that's going on in the world around us, right? There you go again, said Jill. Yeah, exactly. So it's easy to be frustrated and angered and dismayed and saddened by what's going on in the world, but we have choice. We have choice to be aware of it, to keep advocating for the outcome we have. So you have to understand that you don't have to do anything, but it's beneficial to understand that acceptance, right, that they're doing this, is not a process of condoning. We're not condoning what they're doing. We're accepting it. But that doesn't mean that we're not advocating for a different outcome as well. We can advocate for a different outcome without actually fighting their choice for the outcome. We don't need to directly fight them. We just expand out of their influence and keep projecting what we are choosing on top, forward, in our vision, right? It's in some minds it might be subtle, but it's a massive, massive difference, right? It's a massive difference. It doesn't need to look particularly differently. You still keep doing the same things. You keep doing your best to buy organics. You keep doing your best to purify your food. You keep doing your best to talk to people, educate people around, the fact that a lot of our food is being sprayed with this and that and diminishing this and all of the bullshit around globalization and corporatization and the processing of our food and polluting of our air and our water and all of these financial agendas to create, lack mentality and enslavement. We can talk to people about all of that, but from a space of love where we're lovingly inviting them to expand with us out of that narrative rather than to get angry and contracted and fight it. See, it's just a delicate balance to find non-compliance without fight, as Mahatma Gandhi tried to achieve, how do we just be civilly non-compliant with the agenda without being violent, And violence is not just, beating people up, violent in our thoughts, violent in our attitude, how do we maintain this ahimsa? In yoga and Sanskrit, we call it ahimsa, non-violence, which is this deep-seated peace and acceptance. As Michelle said, it's easy to get caught up in the fear of the situation and lose yourself in it. It is very easy to do, and that's basically what they're hoping you do. That's the whole game that's kept us separate and basically allowed them to keep harvesting our energy for eons now, for millennia at least. We've been giving our energy to them through this fear-based process of losing ourself, losing our self-identity, losing our true understanding of our sovereignty and our divinity. It's time to reclaim that, right? And that is just a very, very personal choice that we consistently make to reclaim our sovereignty, to keep remembering that we are a sovereign being, and all of this other outside agenda does not need to control us, does not need to overly influence us. It doesn't. We can live a blessed life in these shitty situations. That's the truth. It's the truth. People are doing it. You can do it too. You can live a blessed life despite the fact all of this stuff is going on that is not quote unquote ideal. So, my friends, that's it. Don't resist your resistance. Be compassionate with yourself, first and foremost. This is what I've just talked about, living this blessed life despite the fact that we're being, our situations are being manipulated in ways that are not ideal. It's not easy. So you're not supposed to just get that right easily. You're not. So be compassionate with yourself. Awesome. I'm glad this is a good talk for you, Sister Michelle. So be compassionate and just keep choosing to be consistent as you can be without disciplined, without, what's the right word? Fear-based discipline, right? Not berating yourself every time you fall down the hole, right? we're all falling into the hole. We're all having thoughts or directing our energy in ways that are not constructive for us, being manipulated by the fear-based agendas, etc. We're all doing it. I'm doing it all of the time. But slowly but surely, I'm doing it less. Right? Because I'm bringing as much as I can, choosing to bring mindfulness into my day, choosing to stop and take some breaths and remember to be grateful for the fact that I'm alive and I'm expressing myself, and to consciously choose to recognize the joy in my being there, and to take my power back, take the idea that I'll be happy when I finish this or I get on top of that back, right? Because it's a program. It's a program that I'm postponing my happiness into the future, when this is finished, when that's finished, when we've got this tidied up, etc., etc. This is how we've been programmed, and it's not necessarily easy to change that program. But at the same time, step by step, we make progress. And while the progress is never fast enough for our ego, it's never fast enough for our ego, we are making fast progress right now. So be satisfied with the progress that you are making, and allow yourself to relax, and allow yourself to enjoy the moments, right? The moments where you do have some clarity. Yeah, Jill said, staying out of the rabbit hole of stuff to learn and study and to do. Yeah, and at the same time, if you find joy in learning something new, and if you find joy in being inspired into doing something different, then do it, right? The point is to do it with love, not fear, right? It's not that we need to learn stuff in order to stay safe and get it right. It's that we enjoy learning stuff because it gives us the opportunity to expand into a new expression of ourselves, into maybe a more authentic expression of ourselves. We get to experiment with different concepts, whether we're learning stuff about our diet, whether we're learning stuff about how health works, whether we're learning stuff about economics and how it's been turned against us. We can do that from a space of joy, as opposed to trying to figure out what we need to fix in order to stay safe or be successful. A subtle difference. The actions can be almost identical, but it's the underlying motivation for doing it. Is it fear or love? It's a very simple equation. The more that we operate from the foundation of love, the more joyful and the more relaxed we're going to be in the world, and ultimately the more successful we'll be as a soul having an expression through a human form. If we keep getting caught up in the fear and the programming around, we have to work this out in order to stay safe or in order to be successful, right? Either to survive or to thrive, it doesn't really matter. If we're operating from a lack space now and putting our happiness or our success in the future, then we're always going to be stressed, and we're always going to be disconnected from the truth of who we be. Awesome. Yeah, Sister M said, we only really learn in joy. We can hold it then. Exactly. The only way we're going to understand what our happiness is by experiencing it. And the only way we get to experience it is by relaxing into it and allowing it to emerge naturally, as opposed to figuring it out and then planning to achieve it. This is the difference, right? Awesome. Jill said, I've recently tweaked my diet and suddenly the unsightly red discoloration patches on my skin are starting to fade away. Yay. Awesome. Yep. So identifying something that's been creating a reaction and a detoxification symptomology, which is the rash, is good, right? So yeah, keep being willing to experiment, but yeah, do it from love, right? Not fear. Don't try to get rid of the unsightly red blotches because the unsightly red blotches are bad, but do it because you'd love to be in a more harmonious state in your physicality, because that would feel joyful. Okay, friends, I will be back next week. That was Chat with Matt. Any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always reach out to me. Either send me an email or reach out Facebook Messenger, or put a comment in here. I read all the comments. Don't worry about that. Bye for now.